Bears podcast with Brad, Jim, and Will. What have they been watching lately? They're husky, hairy, huggable homos. Movie Bears podcast.
Hello all and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week, along with some of my favorite husky, huggable, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we're having tech issues right out of the gate. I can see it already, Jim. This is going to be fun to edit. Weird that going live introduced a delay in my camera.
Yeah, I'm getting a big delay.
Is it an audio delay as well, or just a delay in my video?
I mean,
It's
we
just
can't
video.
tell. They're just out of sync. I think it's your video is way behind.
Okay.
Your audio sounds like it's pretty well in time with Jim's. It's just your video is out of sync.
Yeah, you're answering us
weird.
when we talk, so I think your audio is good. Video is down.
Has like that overdubbed kung fu movie look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let me switch. Boop, boop. Now I'm way zoomed in. The joys of doing this live.
Hi, everybody.
Logitech, please make a better product. It would be so nice. Okay. I think
Today's
we're better.
episode brought to you
Yeah?
by Logitech.
Yeah,
I know.
looks better.
We're good to
It
go?
looks better.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
What?
It was. Now it's not again.
It's out of sync again?
Oh, now it's back in sync. So I don't know. It may be
in sync
drifting
for
in and
me.
out.
Okay. Let's just roll with it. Let's just roll
Okay.
with it. All right. Here we go. Backing up. Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and along with my fellow husky, hairy, huggable homos and friends, we review films either current or classic on this show, all, of course, with a lovable queer twist. If I sound like there's a Mack truck parked in my sinuses, it's because there's a Mack truck parked in my sinuses. I have a sinus infection. Boo, hiss, cold, flu, sinus infection season. It's a thing, but I'm going to do my best to roll through it. But I am going to count on my wonderful co-host to maybe help pick up some of the slack so that you don't have to hear me talk like this the whole show. Jim Pugliafico is with us in the virtual studio as usual. We love him. We couldn't do this without him. Hey, sweetheart, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. I am excited to talk about two movies tonight with you guys. Two new movies. So the only thing I'd say to you, Brad, is since you have a truck parked in your sinuses, is get the truck out.
Ha ha ha. I've been doing unspeakable things with tissues, trying to do just that, Jim. But that truck doesn't want to go anywhere, so I'm gonna have to call a tow company that can haul trucks. I guess.
Wait, the truck is snot coming out.
All right, that's enough for that. Jim, welcome to the show. Jim mentioned that we're going to be doing two movie reviews this week, and totally forgot that in my intro because I'm sick and I'm not in my right mind.
It's okay.
But yes, we are talking two films. The first film is Napoleon, the new bio-epic, all about the life and times of the titular character Napoleon, as well as The Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is the prequel film all about the origination, if you will, of President Snow from the Hunger Games movies that were coming out, a decade ago. So two big movies to talk about. Jim is here to help us do that, but also the delightful, the incredible, the amazing William Lindis is also here. Will, how are you?
I'm great, Brad. I did not have to park a big Mack truck right in this little sinus. So I'm good. I'm fine. I'm holding in there, and I'm glad you're here with us today too. I know it's not fun to sort of be talking all day when you're sort of in head voice, but you know what? I hope you I don't know, did whatever your little treatment is, put your Vicks on or whatever, because we're gonna have a fun time talking about these movies tonight.
All right, excellent. Well, I'll do my best. I notice that I do sound very nasally. We'll just pretend I'm Voldemort. An evil villain on a show about evil villains that's written by an evil villain, Voldemort. being the evil villain written by an evil villain, just to clarify.
Yeah. No. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I like that. And actually, I'd like to see it. Maybe you can introduce each segment in villain voice, like, "Ha! Now it's time to move on to a ballad of songbirds and snakes," or whatever. I don't know what your villain voice is, but
Oh goodness. I don't think I have that in me, but I like the thought. All right. Well, we have so much to talk about. We're going to go ahead and dive into our movie discussions momentarily. However, before we do so, you should know we're going to talk about both of these films totally spoiler free for about 10 minutes apiece. Then we'll give you fair warning before we open things up to spoilers. Those of you who are listening live, when we give you that spoiler warning, step away for, 15, 20 minutes, then come on back to hear our next movie review. If you haven't seen the Hunger Games origin movie, then step away and just don't come back until after you've seen the movie, because we're not doing plugs this week. So just a heads up there. But Jim, well, let's do it. We're going to kick things off with our review of Napoleon. All right, Jim, I know from your YouTube history that you have a love of historical works. You love history. You love period pieces. You love reenactments. You love Joaquin Phoenix. So you seem very, very fitting as a choice to kick this movie discussion off. Tell us a little bit about Napoleon, if you don't mind, and give us, of course, spoiler-free, your initial thoughts.
Yeah, so let's dive into this new movie by director and producer Ridley Scott, who last gave us a movie called The Last Duel. If you guys remember that one or got to watch it, it was also kind of a historical drama piece. This one stars, as you said, Joaquin Phoenix as Napoleon, Vanessa Kirby as Josephine, and we'll get into what that means in a little while. A lot of other folks. I'm not going to go through the whole cast, but let me give you kind of the, I think people probably, when they hear about this movie, they probably have an idea what it is. And it is a historical epic that details the rise and fall of French General and Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte and his relentless journey to power through the prism of his addictive, volatile relationship with his wife, Josephine. No real spoilers, I guess, in this, unless you're going in without much knowledge of who Napoleon was, but I think a lot of us probably do, although we will have a spoiler section, of course, like we always do. My impressions of this one is, geez, I wasn't very high on this movie going in. I kind of thought I knew what I would be getting. It looked like a pretty straightforward, biographical, historical vision of Napoleon. And that's generally what we got. Joaquin Phoenix is kind of exciting when he steps into a role. He's going to give a lot to it. And I think he does here, although we'll talk about that a little bit too. But I think my main gripe with this movie is, first of all, it is 2.5 hours long, which, I don't know, in today's movie world, 2.5 hours isn't like the longest you're going to see for movies, right? Movies are coming in that 2 to 2.5 hour range, largely. However, this is a movie that I think kind of suffered from its length. It felt to me, and we know this now, that there is a 4-hour version of this movie that was made by Ridley Scott that's going to come out when it hits streaming on Apple TV sometime in the future. I don't think a date's been announced, but that is going to be, the whole movie that Mr. Ridley Scott envisioned, right? This movie is a reduced version of it, and I think we haven't seen the 4-hour version, but I'm guessing that this movie is poorer for that hour and a half that was pulled out of this one, because it feels very choppy. This movie is Napoleon's adult life from the beginning of the first French Revolution to his death, right? That's what this movie is, and it just feels like vignettes of his life without much. What I felt was missing from this movie is what made him the way he is. Like, do we know anything about what kind of formed him into the person that he is and his personality? They talk about his field general genius, right? Like he had these great ideas about fighting wars and battles and all that, and they showed a lot of battles in here, but it never really explained, like, okay, what was his thing? What I mean, he had a lot of cannons, he had a lot of people on horses, and we saw a lot of fighting, but we don't know what his thing really was. They never showed us like the behind, like what he was thinking about these things. The only through line in this movie that really kind of made it gave me any narrative feelings or emotions was his relationship with Josephine, which, look, it was weird. It was, I loved Vanessa Kirby here. I thought she was great. To me, she was the best part of the film. But that was the only through line that kind of made this movie semi-interesting for me. Joaquin Phoenix was fine. He's good in pretty much everything he does. I don't think there was much of a role for him here to do, though. I mean, he's looking stoic. He's, there are a few moments where he kind of has his breaks. And those to me were the exciting parts of the film. Along with, there's some great action sequences, but anybody who's watched like Game of Thrones or something like that, we've seen great battle sequences already. I don't think this thing brought much new to the table there. But they were well done. They were well choreographed and stuff. So look, I don't think anybody should run out and see this film. I'm going to say, for me, this is kind of a skip it in the theaters right now. If you really, I don't know if I can bring myself to, now that I've seen the 2.5 hours, to watch 4 hours of it, but I'm betting if I do, I might have a better experience. So, a pass for me in the theaters.
All right. Swing and a miss for Jim. Will, how about for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo a lot of that. This is a very like lowercase f fine film for me. Like, it's super watchable. There's definitely some stuff that you can like hook onto here. The Vanessa Kirby stuff, the through line with Josephine is really good. I think this movie looks very good. I think like just from the way that it's shot to the way it's color graded to all of that, like it makes any of the scenes that you're in just look like they're pleasant to look at. And that's always a good experience when you're watching a film, just, the care that goes into that. But I'm 1,000% with you on a lot of what you just said, Jim. Like, this is one of those situations where I kind of wish that I hadn't seen it yet so that I could watch the 4-hour version when it comes out, whatever, in streaming, because I kept watching this thinking, it keeps like sort of like it felt like a skipping stone across water. It never really had enough weight to like sort of like sink anywhere. It just sort of hopped over to the next scene. And so I felt that there was a lack of like personality or character or something for me to really like invest in. That said, I've already invested 2.5 hours into this myself, so I don't know that I want to go back and watch the 4-hour version of it now that I've already put this much time into it. So it's one of those like, well, this may be the only version that I end up watching, right? It's perfectly fine. Like there's some really good stuff in here. I do think that the battle scenes, specifically some of the ones and some of the scenes that we see in the trailer, look pretty interesting, not setting the world on fire, but definitely, hold your interest. And there are some moments where Joaquin Phoenix gets to do some sort of big acting, which I think Joaquin Phoenix is the type of dude who you want to have in a role like this. Like, if you think about, he played the Emperor in Gladiator. He kind of cut his teeth there. He did the Master. He was in the Joker. He plays these characters who are like both either like over the top big in their masculinity, and because of that they feel small, or they're kind of like clumsy and awkward in their portrayal of masculinity. I think that's a great angle to take a character like Napoleon, like the big little man kind of historically. We didn't get to see that. We didn't get to see him really do much of that until those few moments where you started to see it come out, which makes me hope maybe that there's more out there, but I didn't get a chance to see it. So this isn't like a full this isn't a whiff for me, but I do think that there are a lot of stronger films out right now. We're moving into the prestige season, right? There's a lot of really great films coming out in the next couple of months. If this were like a I don't know, like a February release, a March release, something like that, I would say, yeah, check it out. It's worth it for that. But I don't know. It's just, I could recommend like 4 or 5 other things in theaters today that are better than this. So I don't know. Mileage will vary, but I just was a little disappointed.
Yeah. Will, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts there as well. Maybe not quite as down on it as Jim, but still didn't trip all the triggers, it sounds like. For me, and I'll be brief because again, I sound terrible, but this was a very mismarketed movie in terms of its name. Maybe it's called Napoleon, but I have 2 other titles for this movie that I think would have worked better. One of them is Cannon Man because it's just yelling and cannons. So that's one. Kind of like Rocket Man a few years ago. Cannon Man. The second one is maybe a little more on point. Instead of calling it Napoleon, I'd call it Napoleon because my God, was this boring as fuck. Listen, I love Ridley Scott. I like a lot of his films. I don't think I was as positive on the wow, can't remember the name of it. What was the one a couple years ago? Adam Driver.
The Last Duel.
The Last Duel.
Oh,
The Last Duel. Thank you. I was not as positive on that, I think, as you were, Jim and Will.
It wasn't
and
great,
that's okay.
great, but it was so
You know, it was pretty stinky for me. But I was kind of hoping, working with Joaquin Phoenix, who, he brilliantly worked with on Gladiator. And, Joaquin Phoenix is just very hot right now. Post Joker, I was like, I can't wait for what we're going to get here. And what I got was basically nap fuel. It's pretty. The battle scenes are kind of cool. Unfortunately, we get the coolest battle, pun intended, in the trailer. So like that really neat moment where a thing happens. I'm not going to talk about it now because I don't want to remind you if you've forgotten. We'll talk about it in spoilers, but I wish that had been reserved for like seeing it for the first time when I was actually watching the movie. I will say I did really like Vanessa Kirby here as Josephine. I think she did a great job. I would have liked to maybe had a little more Josephine, but I mean, that's a minor complaint. Joaquin Phoenix, whom I love and adore. It was weird here, y'all, watching him play this character. Obviously, Napoleon has some idiosyncrasies, and there's a bunch apparently I didn't know about. I don't know if they're real or not. They might be a Ridley Scott thing. Who the fuck knows? But it was like some kind of mix of like fucking Sling Blade and Les Mis, like watching him in certain scenes, and I couldn't. You know that scene in the Marvels when Monica Rambeau turns to Captain Marvel and she's just like, I can't, can you? That was me in those scenes for the movie. So unfortunately this one is a big pass for me. Jim, when this 4-hour thing comes out, God love you. I hope it's better. I hope you enjoy it. I will be playing Baldur's Gate or doing literally anything else but watch the 4-hour version of this movie. So
all right, I'll watch it for both of you and tell you how I thought it was.
Yeah, let us
That's
know.
your homework assignment. There you
go. or a torture chamber scene. Who knows? But maybe it'll be better. What I want to know is if Ridley Scott thought a 4-hour version of this was going to make it to theaters, or if he knew early on he was going to have to cut it down to 2.5 hours for a theatrical release. Because what we got at 2.5 hours, just I don't know. I don't understand the decision. Also, if I wanted to watch the fucking History Channel, I'd watch the fucking History Channel. This movie is really like Napoleon told over decades. And while that's cool and all, I think I was hoping for more of like a story grounded in like a certain period of his life, even if it was just over like 3 or 4 years versus like decades. I don't know. Maybe I would have resonated more with the character. Why Joaquin Phoenix doesn't fucking age over the course of 25 years, I don't fucking know. But somehow, I don't know if he's sucking down unicorn blood or something in the French Revolution. Who knows? But anyway, this movie was not for me.
Yeah, it's the jumping around part. Like, you know, 1 minute they're having a battle, the Battle of Waterloo, or no, whatever. The Battle of Waterloo was one of the last ones. But what was the one with the ice? I forget which one that was. But they're having that battle, and then like in the next scene, what is it? Okay,
Hoth.
and then
nice.
Toth.
He's
Toth.
Yeah. He's kidding. Hoth, like from Star
Like
Wars.
Star Wars, yeah. It's just
with the AT-AT walkers.
I'm being interested.
Anyway,
yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
Ridley didn't get George Lucas money for this movie. He only had Ridley Scott money, so he couldn't do the walkers. But and then like all of a sudden, strangely, they show up in Egypt in one part of the movie. I'm like, wait, the fuck? Like, wait. Like,
yeah. This might be a good time
Europe
to
Egypt. Well,
please, Jim. Yeah. This might be a good time to go into spoilers because I think we're starting to reveal some of the extra stuff in the film.
That makes sense. Exile us to the spoiler section.
Are we good with making that transition?
Sure.
Cool. All right. Then spoilers for Napoleon are officially fair game. If you haven't seen the movie yet, this is your chance to step away for the next 15 minutes. Come on back for our discussion of the Hunger Games prequel. But here we go. Spoilers, fair game. Jim, I love that you brought this up. So we go from snow to Egypt, you said, and it sounds like you found that a little jarring. Is that right?
Yeah, we go to Egypt and they're blasting cannonballs into the pyramids and shit. Like, I'm like, what is going on here? Like, and in my mind, I'm like, I'm a logistics guy, right? So I'm like, how did they get the fucking armies, like, his army from wherever the fuck he was in Europe or wherever to Egypt, right? And then to Russia. I mean, at one part of the movie, they did show them suffering a lot of casualties going from somewhere to Russia or from Russia to France or wherever it was, back to France. But yeah, I don't know. It's just weird. Some really weird choices in this movie. And like you said, Brad, they chose kind of historically the wide approach, to like cover so much of his life, like from when he started, or when he was like a captain in the French Revolution Army or something, the People's Army or whatever it was, and then all the way to his death, and just lacked focus for me. Maybe this would have been better as a Josephine movie, you know what I mean, with only parts of Napoleon and not as many of the battles, because as spectacular as some might think the battles are, yeah, they were fun, but like, did we need to see like 4 or 5 of them? I don't know. Anyway,
we could have gotten away with a couple of those. And I think that this is one, and we can, of course, a little bit of this is like Monday morning quarterbacking yet, right? Because we don't know, or if we do, I haven't read it, exactly when I'm shooting a 4-hour movie to I'm releasing a 2.5-hour movie, kind of like when and how and what conversations happen to make it happen that way. But I think we're all kind of on the same page that like, there was probably not a snowball's chance in hell of this being released theatrically at 4 hours, because listen, the type of people that can pull that off for a film like this are Martin Scorsese, and that's it. Like, that's about the only people who are like really kind of awarded, like, and Nolan, like these are the guys who are able to fill seats with links that long. Ridley Scott is a fantastic director with a hell of a set of bona fides behind him, but not enough to put the butts in seat to justify this type of movie, because that means there's less screenings, which means it cuts down on overall ticket sales. So we knew it was going to be shortened down. So if you know that that's the length of movie you're going to make, and you know that you can't do sort of an exhaustive sort of like womb to tomb style movie, you got to figure out what your point of view is, and then you have to make that what your narrative throughput is, right? Like, going back to The Last Duel, I enjoyed The Last Duel a lot because it gave us that. It was a Rashomon style film where it was like, let's look at these two perspectives, but secretly there's also this other perspective we need to play with. That's a way to tell a story. You know, that's he made a set of decisions and he went with it. Here, you almost started to see that with the Josephine romance. You almost started to see that with the letters that are being sent back and forth. And no matter what's going on in his life, he's always bringing it back to her. But the problem is that we get not as much of her interiority. It's a lot of her sitting around reading letters once we get to that point. And up before, and at that, by the time that she's sort of out of the picture, it's just a bunch of random wars. And again, I know why all of these things happened. I know it's stuff that actually happened, and I know that you're wanting to tell those things. But at this point, pick a point of view, pick a lane, and tell that story. Tell the story of Napoleon. If the IMDb description, that's what you read off, Jim. And if the IMDb description is going to be about told through the prism of his addictive, volatile relationship with his wife, Josephine, fuck yeah, give me that movie. Give me that movie. That sounds really, really good. Mm-hmm. But what we got is we skimmed the surface of that while skimming the surface of a bunch of other things. We tried to be so many different things that we weren't anything really, truly, purely.
I do believe that, and now I'm in the back of my mind, I'm wondering if there were conversations along these lines, that this probably would make a pretty good four-part series. Like, you know, a 4 1-hour episode series of Napoleon rather than a movie. And I'm wondering, since this is Apple, you know, if there was a discussion about, hey, we want your thing to be a 4-part series, and he's like, fuck you, I want to put my thing in theaters, right, where all my things go. And they say, well, if you want to do that, you got to cut it down. So I don't know, it might have been something along, I could imagine that probably happening. But yeah, that's not what we got. Like you said, there were some moments in this that really got me. You know, there's the pork chop scene, or was it lamb chop? I forget what it was. Like, you know, my destiny is this lamb chop or something. He has this line that I like about came out of nowhere, but I'm like, yeah. I'm here for that stuff. I'm here for that crazy shit that he might have done. The crawling under the table, sexy, you know, crawling up between her legs or whatever he's doing, was kind of weird, and that drew me in for a little bit. There are sex scenes in this movie. And like in that weird thing that he did, like when he was horny, I guess. It's like, what the fuck is that? Where did that come from? Was that in the history books? Like, how did that come about, or was that just somebody's thing? And then the sex itself was pretty animalistic, I gotta say. Like, they definitely, I don't know. His portrayal of a guy in general was not that great. Just
yeah, it's breaking my brain just thinking about all of the instances, Jim, where that was a thing. I think the only one that worked for me, the whole like him as a guy, was the scene where Josephine opens her legs and she's like, look down. And once you look down, you'll never stop wanting it. I'm like, I'm going to fucking use that line. That is amazing. Sure enough, he looked down and he was hooked forever after that. You know, that was pretty awesome. But like the sling blade / excited little boy noises when he was like butt fucking, no, didn't work for me.
Well, it could have worked for me more if, like, again, it's like, pick a lane. You know, if the idea is that you want to tell the story about this guy who is like, goes from military genius to conqueror to emperor to exile to emperor, like do all of that, but also through all of that, he's sort of like a little man, a troubled man, and I don't mean short, but just like sort of like, like we call it a Napoleon complex for a reason, right? Just like that sort of like that need to aspire to greatness because you're compensating for something. If you wanted to play that angle and then also make him sort of do like that kind of like the weird sex stuff, that makes sense, right? It's someone who is trying to overcompensate for maybe being a shitty lover or not having a lot of experience or having a bunch of horrors but not having someone that he loved until this, whatever angle you wanted to go with. You just gotta commit, man. You just gotta like let it, if you're gonna be weird, let it be weird. Like my favorite movies of the year this year, one of my favorite movies of the year this year is one of the weirdest fucking movies. I also enjoy, there's another Joaquin Phoenix movie that came out this year. Beau is not afraid. Beau is afraid. One of the, I forget what at the time. It's a weird movie. It's a super weird movie, but it's okay because it knows what it is and it veers into it. This movie would have benefited from letting itself get out of the way of itself.
Well, that may be an exhaustion of things to talk about unless you have anything else. Jim, I see your finger. Go.
I just want to, for anybody who's listening to this saying, well, what about this that they got wrong? And what about this that they got wrong? One of the things we didn't really talk about was, because I'm not really knowledgeable enough about the history of Napoleon to say, well, the movie fucked that up because that's not really what happened. Like, he didn't go to this place. He went to this place, or whatever. Or he didn't win that battle, blah, 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 blah. Historical accuracy or inaccuracy is not something that I'm at least prepared to get into, but I have heard other people talking about it. And to me, as a movie, that's not, weirdly, and this may sound weird, but that's not as important to me. I just want a good movie. I could have totally seen a great movie that starts off with him already in exile, right? Kind of reflecting back on his life, and seeing his life like through his aged, and exiled eyes and mind. What was his mindset? That would have been, to me, a fantastic, a more interesting movie. But that's not what we got. That's probably not Ridley Scott's style. He's pretty much more of a straightforward kind of storyteller. So now we just wait for his Gladiator 2, which is his next project. So
I am no longer excited for Gladiator 2. Gladiator is in my pantheon of like top 10 favorite films of all time. Ridley Scott, you earned that place. But holy fuck, I don't want to see Gladiator 2 now.
You never know. He could have a great idea for that. He didn't actually write this film, by the way, either. So I don't know if we can put it all on his shoulders. He is the director. He is the producer. He was not the screenwriter for this. So I don't know what script difficulties they had with this. So, but who knows what Gladiator, but I also heard, I think he's getting the same writer for Gladiator 2 that wrote this film. So,
no.
So you never know what we're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Different stories require different types of storytellers.
Yeah.
So I still have hope for Gladiator. I still have hope for kind of what he was probably intending to do here. I don't know. I think you're right though. Like, I think with Gladiator, since you don't have like, you're not trying to tell a specific person's story as much as sort of like a vibe of a story,
right.
You can let it be.
Plus,
a little
it's not
bit
historic.
weirder.
It's not historic, right? It doesn't have historical accuracy to hold up to. It doesn't have that framework that it has to follow.
And here's the deal: I don't give a shit about historical accuracy, and I know that should also sound pretty bad. I want it to be interesting first, because I'm not reading a Wikipedia article. So if you're going to pick and choose which scenes to put in the movie, because you're not going to tell, this isn't an actual 57 or however old he was, this movie isn't that long. It's not that many years long, right? This is a 2.5-hour movie. So you're condensing, you're editing, you're picking and choosing stuff. So I care less about the historical accuracy as long as it gets the right vibe right, not only for the story it's trying to tell and the type of person that you're representing. I just don't think that it really knew what the vibe was. So
Yeah. Disappointing. But there might be some huge history buffs out there who really love this for what it is. And if that's you, more power to you. I love that you love it. But I'm ready to talk about something else.
Yeah.
If you guys are, what do you think?
For what it's worth, the history buffs apparently online are panning this one too because of its historical accuracy. So I don't think he can win for losing.
Well, never mind. Never mind.
Right. Yeah.
All right, Jim. Well, are we ready to switch gears a little bit and go from the historical to the future dystopian?
Let's chop the head off this one and get to the next.
Yeah, let's slither our way to the next one. I don't know. I don't know.
That one really sings.
Yeah. I'm hungry for this next conversation.
Oh man, me too. But I need a blanket because it's so cold. It might snow. Okay. That's enough. Done. All right, we are going to talk about The Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Up next, again, we're going to talk about it spoiler-free for about 10 minutes. We'll give you fair warning before we go into spoiler territory, and then you can do as you will from there. It's up to you. But here we go. Our discussion of The Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Are you coming to... Okay, that's enough of that. We're back with another Hunger Games movie. How many years after the last one? I don't know. There was a new book. Of course, it became a new movie, and we're here to discuss it. Well, I'm honestly trying to remember what you thought about the old Hunger Games movies. I recently rewatched them all. I know how I think. Jim, I definitely remember what you thought, but Will, it seems maybe fitting to have you kindle this conversation with a little bit of just set up. What is this film, and what do you think of it, and kind of how it all fits in, locks together, etc.?
Absolutely. So this is The Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. It is the 5th movie in the Hunger Games film franchise. And is set as a prequel to the first one some 67 years before the first 63, 67, something like that, years before the first movie takes place. It follows a young Coriolanus Snow, who is, as you know from the other films, the big villain, the guy that's the President Snow, the one that's running the country, running the capital, and running the Hunger Games vicariously. It's a young version of him that is sort of set to mentor one of the candidates in the 10th Hunger Games. And if he does so successfully, he may be able to get a prestigious scholarship and earn his way in the world. I went into this one not super excited, to be honest. I was not feeling the trailers. I have sort of a middling experience with the Hunger Games franchise as a whole. I've read the books, and I think there's stuff of value in there, and I enjoyed reading those. I really enjoyed the first movie. The Catching Fire and both of the Mockingjays were sort of right in that 2.5, 3-star range, like sort of that, like, they were fine for what they were, but I wasn't like hungry for more of them, and I was kind of ready for them to be done.
Small F, fine.
Yeah, small F, fine, right? So I guess imagine my surprise when I'd say, like, I think this was one of the stronger, if not the strongest, of the Hunger Games movies. This does the exact opposite of what Napoleon does. It takes its character, it knows exactly who Snow is, and through not only like what we hear him say, but the actions that he takes, both bold and subtle, we really get to explore who this character is, and we know what his arc through this film is. the game that he's playing, so to speak, the moves that he's making. You know, we know that he ascends to power. Well, if you're a young, ambitious man, like, how do you get from point A to point B? We don't see all of those steps, but we at least see the genesis of that here. I think the actor that they got to play him, Tom Blythe, is just absolutely stellar in this role. I think he plays like, it's great seeing this sort of like Twinkie villain, like, carve his way through the early game of the Hunger Games. I also love Rachel Ziegler here as Lucy Gray Baird. Viola Davis, he comes in and just chews up every scene she is in. It's an over-the-top performance, and it's weird, but I love it. I like every part of it. There are maybe a few parts in the sort of the bridge between sort of act 2, act 3, like towards the back part where it slags just a little bit, you know, like you kind of see where it's going. But it still lands. It does what it's supposed to do. It executes it very well. It makes the characters incredible. It makes the world feel really good too. They went about trying to figure out, what is the music of this world like? Because the one character is a folk singer. How do you build this like world that's built around the type of song that would be popular here? And I think they do that quite well. It looks like that's the songs they're singing. It feels like the songs that they're singing. They sound sincere. The capital feels like it's an early version of the capital. The districts feel like they're a declining version of the districts. This felt good. I don't often see prequels that get me excited. And again, this is not like movie of the year quality for me. This is a fine movie, but capital F fine. Like, I liked it, and I think that it's definitely worth watching. So color me surprised. I hope y'all had a similar experience to me, because I love a surprise at the movies.
A capital F. I heard what you did there. Well, nice. All right. Well, Will, thank you so much for giving us your initial musings on this film. I know we'll get into more as we get into spoilers, but let's head over to Jim and see what Jim had to think about this one.
Yeah. Will, a lot of what you said is kind of exactly how I felt. You talked about the main character, Coriolanus, right? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Coriolanus. His last name ends with anus. Yeah, that's him.
Okay. No. Actually, that's all his first name. His last name is just Snow, but his first.
Oh, that's right. His first name ends with an anus.
It's Coriolanus. Like, you know, you're really working that anus out. Sorry.
Yeah. But no, the character here obviously had. I mean, this is a great character arc, like a villain character arc. Probably one of the best we've seen, or one of the few we've seen really done well, because, you know, like you, Will, I wasn't really looking forward to go. I hadn't read any of the books ever. Got through all of the first 4 movies. Like you, I think I liked the first movie the best. The other ones were so-so to not so great for me. They just kind of felt like they were kind of beating a dead horse at some point for me. But then to like go back and give us a prequel about the day, you know, several years before the first movie. I thought it was excellent, the way it was set up, and but yeah, the actor's great. The character arc I loved. Rachel Ziegler is great. You know, I love folk music, so to see folk music be part of like a modern popular movie is not very common, right? You don't see that. Like pop music, we get, like, if there was some kind of weird pop music of the day, that would have been more, you know, expected. But I loved seeing the folk music here. Yeah, so I will say that this movie did surprise me as well. And I think this is a movie we should, you know, I think if you have a chance to go out and see, if you had any, you know, if any good feelings toward the original Hunger Games movies or the books. I don't know if there's a book that supports this movie or not. I don't, or if it just was written based off of the world created in the first books and the movies. But I think this movie is worth seeing. This is a definite thumbs up for me.
All right, Jim, thank you for weighing in with your thoughts as well. To answer your question, yes, this one was a book as well. The author of the original novels wrote this one as a prequel, and then it was adapted into a movie. Full transparency, I have not read the book for this one. I read the other Hunger Games novels like you will, but I haven't read this one yet. And part of that is because I wanted to see the movie first. The other Hunger Games books I read after I saw the movies because I didn't even know they were a thing until the movies were coming out. So I wanted to kind of keep that up because the books are usually infinitely better than the films. I think that holds true for the first 4 movies. I don't know how I'm going to feel. I am going to go back and read the book for this one, but I'll tell you, I was really surprised by this movie. Especially having just rewatched all of the Hunger Games movies. I totally agree with you both. The first one, super strong. As they went, it was just diminishing returns. J-Law serving looks, the 1,000th utterance of the word PETA. And I was just like, man, now I got to see the Songbirds and Snakes. Thank God it's not about Katniss and PETA, but I don't know. But I actually came out of this super positive on it. I really think that this was a compelling villain origination arc. We get to see, without going into spoilers, the trailers kind of cover this. We get to see a young President Snow as an idealistic young man trying to make his way in the Capitol, and he gets pulled into some machinations around the 10th annual Hunger Games. We get a predecessor to the Stanley Tucci character. I don't know if it's supposed to be his dad or his grandpa or what, but we get some of that like Flickerman magic in this one. And Viola Davis, my God, Viola Davis in this movie was just incredible. So good. Rachel Zegler, I thought was pretty good too. I'm a little over the like slow down singing drawl thing that like is really popular in music right now. But I think it is very cool that they went with like folk music as sort of the musical foundation, right? Of that district. I mean, it was like, I don't know, it wasn't like hoedown music, but I mean, like, seeing the people of that district, it's in the trailer, dancing and singing, and I don't know, like it made sense to me that when you live in a downtrodden district, music may be your salvation, and someone like Lucy Gray Baird, might be a fun way out of that a little bit. So I think all of those things work really well for me. Peter Dinklage, you'll always hold a special place in my heart for Game of Thrones, but man, it would be so great to see him play something different. I felt like, I was watching Tyrion in the Hunger Games a little bit, and that was a little disappointing, but who knows? I mean, maybe he could have had better direction. Maybe he could have had better writing. I don't know. But I think overall, this was a very satisfying story that kind of surprised me a little bit because we hit a point where I thought the movie was ending. I'm like, all right, that's the end of the movie. They've told the story they were going to tell. We're going to get part 2 probably in a year. And then the movie kept going. And then I was having like non-flashbacks to like Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon. Sorry. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, does this movie need to keep going? Like you did it. You stuck the landing. Like, know when to end it. And then like the best parts of the movie came in like the last third of the film, and it ended. And I'm like, did that really just happen? That was awesome. So this earned one of my very rarely given out coveted 4 stars with a heart symbol spots on Letterboxd. I don't know that it's enough to make my top 10, of 2023 list. There are some other big heavy hitters in that 4-star area. I'm going to have to kill some darlings and figure it out in some Hunger Games of my own at the beginning of the year when we try to figure out our top films. But I do appreciate that we got this one. I'm so glad that I saw it. And I got to finish a Spider-Man novel I'm reading, and then I'm totally diving into this one. So, Suzanne Collins, thank you for taking us back to this world.
And, I haven't read that one yet either, but I think part of the reason why it wasn't as widely read as some of the others is it came out several years after the first few books. It actually had its release during the pandemic. So it ended up doing sort of like a digital and audiobook release as part of the marketing thing for it, because it's like, well, things are different now. So, I mean, I think it is worth going back and revisiting. And you mentioned the music too. Like, the District 12 is a coal mining town, is sort of like its vibe, right? And this really had like the folk music, which I'm also super and big fan of, like really hits that sort of like coal miner's daughter style,
Yes.
like music. It
Early
works.
country,
It clicks.
yeah.
Yeah, it has that, and it has a Appalachian feel intentionally, because I think it's supposed to be set sort of like, Appalachia to the coast, sort of in the West Virginia area. If I remember seeing on the map correctly, I don't remember. It seemed like it was somewhere around there is where District 12 hits. So anyways, I there's so much to really enjoy here. We do need to talk spoilers to talk about the arc a little bit more, because I think there's some nuance to the arc that that we can only gloss over here.
Yep, I agree. Jim, do you have any other thoughts before we go into spoilers?
Yeah, you mentioned the kind of the last half of the third act, which I thought was really, really well done, especially in supporting that arc that we're going to talk about in the spoilers. But it almost made the actual games themselves kind of a secondary feature of this movie, which was interesting. How it's a Hunger Games movie, but the actual game, the playing out of the games itself seemed, at least in my mind, was a secondary feature of this movie. I wasn't as interested in the iteration of the games that was done in this film. Although, look, I'm going to say it was pretty well done. How they did it, I appreciated it. We'll talk about it more in spoilers, but I appreciated the way it was framed. But it wasn't the centerpiece of this movie for me. The centerpiece was this character arc of Coriolanus Snow, and kind of the characters that he's involved with along the way, including what is it, Lacey Gray?
Lucy.
Lucy Gray. I keep wanting to say Macy Gray.
Lucy Graybeard.
Lucy Graybeard. Right. Yeah, I think this is a really, Will, you said this word too. This is a nice surprise. I like to be surprised at the movies. This one surprised me.
Huzzah for surprises. I think it caught us all by surprise. So that's definitely a good thing. All right. Spoilers are about to happen, as long as a cat battle doesn't break out on my desk, because Poe and Kira are both here at the same time staring at each other. It's okay.
Yep.
All right. We've got Katniss and President Snow on my desk. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and move on into spoilers. If you haven't yet seen The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, make your choices accordingly. You're adults, probably. Hopefully. We say bad words on this show. It is marked as explicit for a reason. Parents, if you're letting your kids watch, I mean, that's on you. But here we go. Spoilers totally happening.
Balls.
Dick. Where do y'all want to start? That arc you mentioned might be a good starting place. Go for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that when you're telling the story, a prequel story about a character who's a villain, you generally have two paths that you can take. You can have look at all of the shitty things this person does on their way to the top story. And you can have, they were a monster the whole time. Or you can have a very almost like apologetic style movie, where you sort of say, well, he's really not all that bad. Think like Wicked or the Maleficent movies or Cruella, stuff like that when you re-examine. What I think was so smart about this movie is that it did neither, and that was what was unexpected. This movie really went out of its way to humanize Snow. This was not an over-the-top arc evil person, nor was it this secretly redemptive good person. This was a human who had actual things that he cared about and also actual ambitions. ultimately it's a negative arc. Like, this guy does a bunch of shitty things in the way of ambition all the way through, but it does so in a way that neither forgives or excuses what he does, nor just casts it off as just like, well, he was evil. I think that's what's so great about this, to show us just how this type of evil doesn't only exist in like futuristic dystopian stories. They can happen in this type of in our world, technically, right?
Right.
So I thought that was really, really well done.
Yeah, and it's not a switch that gets turned on, right? At least in this movie, right? I mean, at the beginning, his actions are well intentioned, right? He's got really well intentioned guy. He's a straight up guy. He's trying to do the right thing, the good thing. Sometimes it works out for him, and sometimes it ends up biting him or other people in the ass, and that's where things start to go sour slowly over time. Um, I and that's kind of what I liked about it, because at the beginning you're looking at this character saying, he's a good guy. Have we totally misjudged, the character of Snow that we see in that we've gotten to see in the first four movies? Or and if not, we're going to get something really good here. And that's what happened is we saw how he how he morphed into a well-intentioned, idealistic young guy into someone who is damaged and lashing out and dangerous by the end of this movie.
Has it made you, though, re-examine kind of the early parts of the movie? Because it really did for me. Once you see just how far-reaching his stuff is, like, it makes me wonder, like, how much of it was him performing kindness and how much of it was him marketing the performance of his kindness, right? Because everything that he did had intention. Once he found an edge or an angle, he found a way to exploit that. And that's not to say that he didn't have actual emotions and actual feelings, because we get to see those. But I think even those actual emotions and actual feelings, he was able to either put aside or weaponize in his own ambition. And I think that's what's so clever about this, right? Because it really makes you, if it was a movie that hinged on one act of like, this is my turning point thing.
Now I'm bad, right?
And now I'm bad, but it wasn't that. It was, he makes these little micro decisions all through the movie, and they just sort of build up and build up and build up. So it never feels out of character when he does any single shitty thing, because you can look back at all the other ones. But also at the same time, again, he's still a human character who you can see struggling with or working his way through or trying to make his way into this world. I can't speak highly enough about, like, this should be now the blueprint for how you do a exploration of a villain in a prequel.
Wow. Will, for you to say that this should be the blueprint for that is pretty fucking high praise.
Absolutely. I think franchises are just absolutely littered with the corpses of like shitty prequels, right? Like there are a lot of really bad stories that are sort of like do you want to find out how Han Solo got his blaster? You're going to find that out. This movie did not give a shit about the lore of the Hunger Games. It understood the world of the Hunger Games, and it wanted to play in that world. But it didn't care about, like, okay, so this is the part where secretly this bow here is the one that Katniss got later on. It didn't want to play Easter eggs. It wanted to say, if you're the type of, there's some, but like, they're not like they don't feel like the point of the movie. They just feel like stuff that's like added in. Whereas something like Solo is one of the ones I think of for that. I felt like that movie was like you picked 4 or 5 of those Easter egg moments and you just built the movie bridging them. This movie was really more concerned with, if you're going to build a world that 67, by the time the first Hunger Games came out, 74 years ago said, hey, we're going to punish the losers of a war by making their children compete in gladiatorial combat. Let's just jump to a random part in that world and just sort of see how did people feel about this 10 years in? And it felt like a pretty good and, for dystopian fiction, honest exploration of what that might be like.
Yeah, Will, you talk about how did I go back and re-examine like the main character's actions at the beginning of the movie, put them in a different lens, right? Maybe we should have been doing that all along, but I was so drawn into the character and the quote unquote goodness of the character that I think I missed a lot of that. So maybe on second watching, I can go back and say, oh, the reason he gave that, he acted kind to this girl was to get this out of it. You know what I mean? And because on its own, that one act didn't seem like it was, nefarious, right? But as a whole, it does create the arc.
Yeah, I feel like at the beginning of this movie, he's sort of teetering between like doing things because they're good to do and doing things because they look good and will benefit him and his family, who he puts above all else, right?
Yeah.
Both sides are tugging at his motivations, but through the events of this film and things that happen, and Viola Davis and Peter Dinklage being a fucking dick, like he gets pushed over that edge and like embraces that side of things and takes his first literal steps as the snow that Donald Sutherland will one day come to embody, and convincingly so. And when he kind of snaps that suit and puts on his little rose, I'm like, oh fuck, it just happened. That moment right there we go.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Dinklage character. I forget the name of the character, but I liked what they did with his character toward the end too. In his final scenes, where he's showing a different side of his character as well, right? He's got regrets. You've come to find out that he was probably playing the role, right, of what he needed to do to maintain his position in the the capital, right, as the head teacher or whatever he was. But he had regrets about the whole thing as well, and he showed that in the last scenes, and I thought that was brilliant.
I think that he's sort of a cautionary tale against like there are people that kind of have the mentality of like, well, maybe I can try to dismantle this bad thing from the inside. And I think this movie sort of like through the character of Highbottom and Snow tells us like, you can't really dismantle the system from inside the system. All you can do is help elevate yourself within the system when you're within the system. I think if you're going to say like, what's the political message of the Highbottom character? That's what I would take away from that.
Wasn't there a place in Game of Thrones called Highbottom? Or am I thinking of something else?
I think you would know. I think you're thinking about like the
High Garden.
High Garden. Okay.
High Garden is what you're thinking.
You're thinking of the garage at a bear party.
I'm thinking of something.
That's because, high bottom.
I mean, I've seen plenty of high bottoms at pool parties, so
yeah,
stone bottoms, stone tops, yeah, all of them. Yeah.
Pushy bottom.
I mean, they all exist.
Pushy bottom.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that it's neat seeing sort of a world that's defining its own politics. And I do think like Dinklage did a decent job of it. He definitely I think that he had to play it sort of a very specific way. So we didn't get to see sort of we didn't get to spend as much time with him to really get like the emotional depth that we get from our leads. And he didn't get to do any of like the big over the top scenery chewing like Viola Davis got to do. But I still like what he gave us here. Yeah. And between this and he's also the lead this year in Toxic Avenger, where he gives a much more like kind of schlubby performance, which is fun to see Dinklage doing after the Game of Thrones stuff. I don't know. It's just nice to see sort of two movies with the same actor doing sort of different things out in a similar period. Going back to Tom Blythe, though, man, I think I mentioned this in a joke to you guys on Messenger, but we've been playing a lot of Baldur's Gate, and now I cannot get over like if you're going to do a live action Baldur's Gate movie and you're not going to use any of the voice acting cast, put Tom Blythe in as Asterion. This is a super niche reference, but goddamn, he looks like he would make a fantastic Asterion from the way he played Snow in this.
I think you do very well. Thank you.
I think I agree with your agreeing with me, darling.
Jim, you haven't met the beauty that is Asterion yet, but you're going to
I have
love
not.
him, I assure
not.
you.
I'm sure I will. I'm sure I will. Who was the actor? Who was the character that was Coriolanus's Snow's one of Snow's best friends in the movie?
That was actually his cousin, Tigris, who we see in the later Hunger Games movies, all decked out
Not
like
the female. Not the
Oh,
female.
not the female.
The male best friend that he had.
Oh, the male
that he ended
best
up
friend.
that he ended up betraying, I think, in the film.
Yeah, it's what's the prize named after?
Is it Festus
Sejanus?
Sejanus Plinth.
Sejanus Plinth.
Well, a lot of, but Coriolanus, Sejanus. There's a lot of assholes in this movie.
A lot of anus. Yeah. And Katniss does appear in the film.
Yes, there is lots of Katniss.
There is Katniss.
There
is Katniss in the movie.
There is Katniss.
That was kind of a weird thing.
Yeah,
it's
that was
too early for Katniss.
Yeah, Katniss can only come up and break the snow. Some of those stuff like there were. Yeah.
Did they actually say that?
No, but they did a couple of those things like you have to be careful because snow is about to fall. Like there were a couple of hammy lines in here, not enough to like make me dislike the movie, but like there were a couple of like, okay, I get it. The guy's name is Snow, and that's interesting to play with metaphorically. I did like the guy that played it. Josh Andres Rivera is the one that played Sejanus, and I liked him too. He had we got to sort of see him as much more of an idealistic character that that Coriolanus had to bounce up against, but I thought that worked too.
Yeah, I kept looking at the guy, and I'm like, he looks really familiar, and he reminded me like of a young. Here I go, not remembering the actor's name. Vincent D'Onofrio. He reminded me of a young Vincent D'Onofrio.
He was actually in West Side Story with Rachel Zegler. He played Chino, and he played Chino in West Side Story.
Ah, okay, that makes sense then. That's where we've seen him. Nice. Thanks, Will.
Solving mysteries. It's what we do. All right. Well, any other things you are just burning to get out about the Hunger Games, or are we ready to cap this one off?
And question for you too, kind of over this movie. I know that there were a couple of folksy songs on here, and I haven't even looked. Does this movie have like a soundtrack where you can hear some of those songs, or is it more just a score? And I see both of you making I'm not sure faces. That kind of covers my next question. Like, this one was a borderline, like it's not full, but like pop bangers. But I could see a world where like this one also makes its way into the Brad download list or the Jim download list. So I was going to ask if you guys had checked it out yet. I haven't either.
So
I haven't
be honest
either,
with
but
you.
it could.
While I like folk music and I appreciate folk music is not typically my jam. Plus the whole like dying cat singing is not my jam either. I appreciated it here for what it was, and I'm glad that people really enjoy it. But like, it's not something that I'm going to be like, oh my god, I have to go download that. Plus, I really didn't need to hear the Hanging Tree 3 distinct
murder
times
ballads, baby.
in the
Murder
movie.
ballads. That's what it's about.
Once would have been enough for the Hanging Tree.
We did like we did get a lot of Hanging Tree, didn't we? Yeah. It
really left us hanging as to what she was going to sing next.
It's one of those where if I did find a collection of the music or the songs that were featured in the movie, I might give them a second listen just to see if they catch me to the point where I'm like, oh, I like that enough. I might drop that into my playlist.
But then alternatively too, like you could also just like go listen to some like I don't know, like First Aid Kit, or like listen to sort of like some modern versions of that style of music and just sort of like get into that. So
Mhm.
like, yeah, I get it. It's like sometimes it's just like, they'll just listen to something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I definitely have enough real folk in my playlists. Brad will attest to that.
Yes, and no hate or shade about. Oh my God,
Shate.
no
That's a
hate
great
or
word.
shade.
Don't give me any shate.
No hate or shade about the folk music you like to listen to, Jim, because I think the folk music I've heard you listen to is better than this, unless it's really super fast fiddles, in which case my brain just can't.
And
But
that's across the line.
yeah, but I still appreciated this music for what it was. So it's a feather in its cap, I think. So, all right. Well, I think that about wraps things up for our Hunger Games discussion. Boy, we talked about a whole heck of a lot tonight. There's just one question we need to answer. We picked both of these movies because both are about the rise of a villain. And so the ultimate question we must answer is, which movie definitively did that better, Napoleon or The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes? I think I know what you're going to say, but what is your definitive answer?
Oh, Ballad, hands down, Hunger Games.
Oh yeah. Yep. Absolutely. The Hunger Games boss. Yep.
Nice. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And Ridley Scott, if you want to watch a Hunger Games movie before you make Gladiator 2, well, you probably already made Gladiator 2, but take notes. Follow Will's blueprint as stated. There you go.
Blueprint.
The blueprint. All right, so check it out. We've got a full slate of films coming at you before we take our holiday break. Next week, we're going to be with you on December 5th for Godzilla -1. Jim and I are seeing that tomorrow night. So super stoked for that, Will. I know you're going to see it this weekend. Can't wait to hear what you think. After that, 12/13, we've got The Boy and the Heron. 12/19, we've got Wonka. And then we are off the week between Christmas and New Year's. When we come back in the new year on 1/2/24, oh my God, really? 2024? We're going to be catching up on like all the stuff we saw over the holiday break. So just to give you a little heads up of our plan, there it is. Go see Godzilla -1 this weekend and meet up with us next week to talk that one through. In case anybody wants to chat about Godzilla movies or anything else really between now and then, Jim, where can people interact with you online?
You can interact with me. I'm on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico. But if you look under my tag at JJP Out West, you can go into and see my movie rating library or diary of all the movies from this past year that I've seen and rated, given a star rating. Some of them have reviews, little capsule reviews. But yeah, I haven't made any lists yet. I haven't graduated to a letterbox list maker. And when I do that, I may enlist the help of our friend Will here, who is probably much more of an expert at that than I am. But yeah, letterbox is fun, and we're getting there, babe. Just a few more weeks, and we
Yes.
will have completed a whole year of letterboxed. I'm proud of both of us.
I got to tell you, Will, you are responsible for getting Letterboxd my pro subscription that I just signed up for a couple weeks ago. I
Oh,
figured since I've been using it for almost a year, I might as well support them. So,
And when you get to the end of the year, they do some like end of year metrics, kind of like Spotify or Apple Music and those types of things do that you get through the pro account. So like as you're getting your end of year list together, it'll make it even easier that way. So
nice, nice, awesome. All right. Well, Jim, thanks for letting people know where they can connect. Will, how about you? Where can folks find you?
yeah, find me on Letterboxd at the Movie Bear. I'm on a few other socials, Insta and TikTok under the same handle, but really I mostly do stuff there and on Facebook, William Lindis. Just give me a search, say hi.
All right.
Oh, and Blue Sky, I'm on the Movie Bear there, so come say hi.
All right. Thanks, Will. Excellent. Folks, you can find me on Facebook. Just look for Brad Harris. I'm the one who likely has Chub Chaser Bear dolphin, cub, pup, whatever friends in common with you. Send a message first, though, before adding me so I know you're a real person. You can also find me on Letterboxd at iBradPro. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, everybody. We look forward to seeing y'all next week. Take care. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Are you